It's awake. The soldier's voice crackled through my headset, barely masking his panic. Dr. Sørensen, the subject is awake, and the restraints aren't going to hold much longer. I ran down the corridor of the military facility, my boots echoing against concrete walls 3 levels underground. Behind me, General Christofferson shouted orders into his radio. All personnel, this is not a drill. Containment Protocol 7. I repeat, Protocol 7. We reached the observation window. Below us, in the reinforced chamber, she moved. 12 feet of gray-skinned muscle and ancient power, strapped to a table designed for creatures half her size. A troll. A real, living troll, pulled from a melting glacier in Finnmark, Norway's northernmost region, 3 days ago. And she was staring directly at me through the glass, her amber eyes locked onto mine with an intelligence that made my breath catch. Then she spoke. Not in growls or roars. Speaking our language with perfection. You are the one who studies consciousness. The one they call neuroscientist. You want to know what I am. Her voice was like grinding stones, like glaciers cracking, but her words were clear. I will show you. But first, you must understand what you are. And that truth will destroy everything your species believes about itself. What if everything you learned about human evolution was designed to hide the systematic elimination of an entire people? What if the story of our rise to dominance was written by those who committed the great erasure? And what if the victims are still alive to testify? In a frozen military bunker in the Norwegian Arctic, I would discover that humanity's greatest achievement wasn't civilization or technology or art. It was forgetting. Forgetting what we did to get here. Forgetting what we destroyed. Forgetting what we truly are. And when I connected my consciousness to a creature from our forgotten past, I remembered. Hello. My name is Dr. Kia Sørensen. I'm a neuroscientist from Oslo, specializing in consciousness research and neural interface technology. I've spent 20 years studying the human brain, and nothing in my career prepared me for what I found frozen in the Norwegian ice. This is the story of how I learned the truth about humanity's origin, a truth that's been buried for 50,000 years. Before we begin this story, don't forget to subscribe to support our channel. 72 hours earlier, I had been in my Oslo apartment reviewing research data on neural patterns in coma patients. My phone rang at 3 a.m. General Christofferson's voice, usually calm and controlled, carried an edge I'd never heard before. Dr. Sørensen, I'm activating your military consultation contract. There's a helicopter waiting at Fornebu. Pack for 2 weeks in the Arctic. Bring everything you need to study brain activity in extreme conditions. General, what's this about? We've found something in the Øksfjordjökull glacier, one of the largest ice formations in northern Norway. Something that was frozen approximately 50,000 years ago. And Doctor, he paused, and I heard him take a breath. It's alive. And its brain activity is unlike anything we've ever documented. I sat up in bed, suddenly wide awake. What kind of creature are we talking about? That's what we need you to determine. Just come prepared for something outside your normal parameters of study. The line went dead. I packed quickly, my mind racing through possibilities. What could survive being frozen for 50,000 years? Bacteria, perhaps. Some extremophile organisms. But brain activity? That suggested something with a complex nervous system. Something large. 6 hours later, I landed at a facility that didn't exist on any map. A cluster of buildings buried in snow and ice in Finnmark. The landscape around us was brutal in its beauty. Endless white tundra stretching to the horizon. Mountains like jagged teeth against the pale sky. The kind of place where nature reminded you how small and fragile humans really are. Dr. Magnus Holm met me at the landing pad. We'd been colleagues for years, presented at conferences together, debated theories over coffee in Oslo's academic cafes. I'd never seen him look frightened before. His usually precise appearance was disheveled. Wrinkled clothes, uncombed hair, eyes red from lack of sleep. Kia, thank God you're here. I need you to prepare yourself for what you're about to see. Magnus, what exactly did you find? He started walking toward the main building, and I followed. We didn't find it. Climate researchers did. They were studying glacial melt patterns, documenting the accelerated melting from climate change. Their instruments detected a heat signature deep in the ice, a large object maintaining temperature significantly above freezing, despite being surrounded by ice for millennia. We passed through a security checkpoint where armed guards checked our credentials with unusual thoroughness, not regular military. These were special forces, the kind with 1,000-yard stares and weapons always within reach. When the military excavation team reached it, Magnus continued, they thought it was a geological formation at first, some kind of mineral deposit generating heat through radioactive decay, until one of the engineers touched it and it moved. He stopped walking and turned to face me. Kia, we brought it here frozen solid in a refrigerated transport container. Thought it was dead. How could anything survive 50,000 years in ice? But as it warmed in our lab, as the ice melted away from its body, his voice dropped to a whisper. It opened its eyes, and it looked at us, really looked at us with awareness and intelligence. That's when we knew we needed a neuroscientist, because whatever this thing is, it's conscious, it's thinking, and we have no idea what it's thinking about. We descended in an elevator that went down 3 levels. The facility was much larger underground than it appeared on the surface. A warren of laboratories and containment rooms carved into the bedrock. The doors opened onto a corridor with reinforced walls and armed guards stationed every 10 meters. We've had it under observation for 72 hours now, Magnus said as we walked. During that time, we've documented brain activity that shouldn't be possible. Neural firing patterns that would cause seizures or brain death in any known mammal. But it seems completely stable. Have you attempted any communication? Yes. It was awake and coherent yesterday for approximately 4 hours before we had to sedate it again. Not because it was aggressive, because what it said was causing panic among the staff. What did it say? Magnus stopped at a massive vault door at the end of the corridor. It spoke in Old Norse first. Then, when it realized we couldn't understand, it switched to modern Norwegian. Perfect modern Norwegian, with a northern dialect, a language that didn't exist when it was frozen. That stopped me. That's impossible. Language acquisition requires exposure. If it's been frozen, I know. That's one of many impossible things about it. He entered a security code. Before we go in, you need to see the DNA analysis. He pulled up a tablet and showed me the results. Genetic sequencing data that made my scientific worldview tilt sideways. This can't be right. This shows 99.7% DNA similarity to humans. We've confirmed it 16 times using different tissue samples in different labs. Same result every time. But that's closer than humans and chimpanzees. That would make this creature almost the same species as us. Yes, Magnus said quietly, which raises a very disturbing question. If it's genetically almost human, what is it? A subspecies we didn't know existed? An evolutionary branch that split off recently? Or... He trailed off, but I could see where his thoughts were going. Or what? Or our understanding of human evolution is incomplete. Or wrong. He opened the vault door. See for yourself. We stepped into an observation room overlooking a containment chamber below. And I saw her. The troll. Every story I'd heard as a child, every legend my grandmother had told me about the old creatures in the mountains, all of it came rushing back. But this wasn't a story. This was real. She lay on a reinforced examination table, strapped down with restraints designed for animals much smaller than her. 12 feet tall, maybe more if she stood fully upright. Her body was humanoid in structure. 2 arms, 2 legs, proportions that echoed human anatomy but scaled up dramatically. Her skin was gray, rough-textured like weathered stone, but I could see it move with her breathing. Her face was broader than a human face, with a more pronounced brow ridge and larger jaw. But the features were unmistakably intelligent. High cheekbones, a straight nose, lips that looked capable of forming complex speech. Her hair was long, falling past her massive shoulders, the color of dried moss and earth, and her eyes, even closed in sedation, moved beneath the lids. She was dreaming. "Dear God," I whispered. "Your initial reaction is entirely appropriate," said a new voice behind me. I turned to see General Christopherson entering the observation room. He was a tall man, late 50s, with the bearing of someone who'd spent his entire career making difficult decisions. "Dr. Sørensen, thank you for coming so quickly. I hope Magnus has briefed you on the basics of the situation. He's shown me the creature, but I still don't understand exactly why I'm here." The general gestured to the monitoring station where complex brain scans displayed in real time. "Because standard interrogation and communication techniques aren't working. We need someone who understands consciousness, neural function, and the mechanics of how intelligent beings process and share information." He pulled up a video recording. This was yesterday, during the 4 hours she was fully conscious. The video showed the same chamber below us, but with the creature, the woman, awake and sitting upright despite her restraints. Her amber eyes were open, alert, scanning the room with obvious intelligence. Scientists and soldiers stood at a safe distance, weapons trained on her. One scientist, speaking through a microphone, asked in Norwegian, "Can you understand me?" The troll's eyes focused on him. When she spoke, her voice was deep, rough, like stones grinding together. But the words were clear. "I understand you, small one. I understand your language, though it has changed much since the time before I slept. I understand your fear, though it is misplaced. And I understand what you are, though you have forgotten what you were." The scientist on the recording looked confused. "What do you mean, what we were?" "You are human, the small ones, those who chose to shrink themselves, to trade size and strength for cleverness and fire. Those who betrayed their own people and rewrote history to hide the crime." She leaned forward as much as her restraints allowed. "I am Nana, daughter of the old blood, and I remember what you have forgotten." The recording ended. I stood there trying to process what I'd just heard. "She claims to have memories from 50,000 years ago," the general said. "She claims that humans and trolls, and yes, she uses that word for her own species, were once the same people, that there was a conflict, a division, and that humans won through what she calls the Great Betrayal." He looked at me with the exhaustion of a man who'd been questioning reality for 3 days. "We need to know if she's delusional, if these are fabricated memories, or if there's any possibility she's telling the truth. And the only way to know for certain is to access those memories directly. You're talking about a neural link, brain-to-brain communication. Yes, we have experimental technology, equipment your research team helped develop 3 years ago. Brain-computer interfaces designed to allow direct neural communication. If we can connect your consciousness directly to hers, you might be able to access and verify these memories." I looked down at Nana through the observation window. "That technology is still experimental. We've only tested it on willing human subjects in controlled conditions. You're asking me to link my brain to a creature whose neural architecture we don't fully understand. The risks are significant. We know. But Dr. Sørensen, if she's telling the truth about her age, about what she remembers, we're talking about access to 50,000 years of history that humanity has no record of. Knowledge about our own evolution that could rewrite everything we think we know." He was right. If Nana really did carry memories from that long ago, it would be the archaeological discovery of all time. Living testimony to events that predated writing, agriculture, civilization itself. But the risks were enormous. Neural interface technology was still in its infancy. Linking my consciousness to an unknown entity could cause permanent psychological damage, memory contamination, identity confusion, even brain death if something went wrong. I need time to study her neural patterns before I can even consider attempting a link. "You have 48 hours, the general said. "After that, other agencies will want to take custody of her. They won't be as considerate in their approach." The implication was clear. Other military organizations, other governments, would treat Nana as a specimen to be dissected, not a person to be understood. I'll need full access to her medical data. Brain scans, genetic analysis, everything you've collected. Done. Magnus will be your primary liaison. Whatever you need, you get. I spent the next 48 hours immersed in data, studying Nana's brain structure, comparing it to human neuroanatomy. The similarities were remarkable. She had all the same basic structures: cerebral cortex, limbic system, brainstem, but scaled up. Her brain was approximately 3 times the mass of a human brain. But it wasn't just about size. The hippocampus, the region associated with memory formation and storage, was proportionally much larger than in humans. And the neural density, the number of connections between brain cells, was significantly higher. It was as if her brain was optimized for memory storage in a way human brains weren't. Magnus joined me in the observation room late on the second night. "What do you think?" he asked. "I think her brain is extraordinary. The architecture suggests capabilities we don't have. Look at this." I pulled up a comparison scan. In humans, memories are stored through patterns of neural connections that strengthen or weaken over time. That's why our memories are unreliable. They change each time we access them. But Nana's hippocampus has structures I've never seen before. These dense clusters of neurons connected in crystalline patterns. What does that mean? It means her memories might not degrade the way ours do. If I'm interpreting this correctly, she might have something like permanent memory storage. Every experience, every moment, preserved exactly as it happened. For 50,000 years? For however long she's been alive. Magnus, if she really does remember events from that long ago with perfect clarity, we're not just talking about history. We're talking about a living library of human prehistory. He was quiet for a moment. "Do you believe her story? About humans and trolls being the same species?" I looked at the DNA analysis again. 99.7% similarity. The genetic evidence supports a very close relationship. Closer than any known hominid species. And there are legends across multiple cultures about giants, about a time when humans weren't the only intelligent species. What if those legends are based on real history? Then we committed the systematic elimination of an entire people against our own relatives and forgot about it. Or were encouraged to forget. Winners write history, Magnus, and they usually write themselves as the heroes. My computer chimed with an alert. New brain activity from Nana. I pulled up the monitor. Her sedation had been reduced for a scheduled medical check, and she was partially conscious. The neural patterns showed complex activity in language centers and memory regions, as if she was thinking about something specific, remembering something. On impulse, I activated the audio feed. Soft singing filled the observation room. Nana was singing in a language I didn't recognize. Old Norse, maybe, or something even older. The melody was haunting, beautiful, filled with a sadness that transcended language. "What is that?" Magnus whispered. I checked the translation software, but it couldn't parse the archaic dialect. The words were too old, but the emotion was universal. It was a lullaby, a song you would sing to a frightened child. "I think," I said slowly, "that she's singing to someone who isn't here, someone she lost." The full weight of what we were dealing with hit me then. This wasn't just a specimen or a research subject. This was a person who had lost everything. Her people, her world, everyone she'd ever known. Frozen for 50,000 years while the world changed completely without her. "I'll do the neural link," I said, "but on one condition. We reduce her restraints. We treat her like a person, not a prisoner. If I'm going to access her memories, she needs to trust me, and I need to trust her. The general won't approve that. Then he can find another neuroscientist. Magnus, look at the genetic data. She's 99.7% human. That makes her closer to us than Neanderthals were. If she has rights to anything, it's humane treatment." Magnus studied me for a long moment. "You're right. I'll talk to the general." It took another 12 hours of negotiation, but they agreed. We would reduce Nana's sedation completely, remove most of the restraints, and I would enter the containment chamber alone, unarmed, to attempt communication. If she showed any sign of aggression, the guards would use tranquilizer darts powerful enough to drop an elephant. But I would give her the chance to talk first, to be seen as a person, not a monster. The general met me outside the containment chamber. "Dr. Sorensen, I want you to understand the stakes here. If this goes wrong, if she harms you or escapes, she won't. I've studied her neural patterns for 2 days straight. She's not showing signs of aggression or instability. She's showing signs of grief and loneliness. She's been awake in a strange place, surrounded by people who point weapons at her, for 3 days. I'd be terrified too. You're betting your life on that assessment. I'm betting my life on 50,000 years of evolution that made humans and trolls the same species. On genetic similarity that says we're family, even if we forgot about each other. And I'm betting that she wants answers as much as we do." He studied my face, then nodded slowly. 45 minutes. That's how long you have before we sedate her again, regardless of how things are going. Good luck, doctor. I entered the containment chamber alone, the heavy door sealed behind me with a hiss of pressurized air. Nana was sitting upright on the examination table, her hands free but her legs still secured. She could have broken the leg restraints if she wanted. I'd seen the data on her strength, but she hadn't tried. She'd just been sitting there, waiting. Her amber eyes found mine immediately. "You are different from the others," she said in Norwegian, her deep voice clear and precise. "You look at me and see a person, not a threat. My name is Dr. Kia Sorensen. I'm a neuroscientist. I study consciousness and how thinking beings process information. I know who you are. I have listened to everything said in this place for 3 days. Your human ears may not hear through walls, but mine do." She tilted her head, studying me. "You want to understand me, to know if my memories are real. The others want to know if I am dangerous, but you want to know if I am true. Yes, I want to understand what you are, what you remember, and what it means for both our species." "Our species," Nana repeated softly. "You use that word correctly. Not 2 species, 1 species that divided itself, 1 family that tore itself apart." She gestured to the chair the medical team had left in the chamber. "Sit, Dr. Sorensen, and I will tell you the truth that your people spent 50,000 years forgetting." I sat, my heart pounding, but my hands steady. "The others call us trolls," Nana began. "A word that in your modern tongue means monster. But that is not what we are. We are the jotnar. In your old tongue, you would call us giants, the old people, the first people. We were here long before your ancestors decided to become small. You're saying humans evolved from trolls? No, I am saying we were the same. 50,000 years ago, there was only 1 people. We called ourselves the jotnar. We were tall, strong, deeply connected to the earth. We could feel the world's rhythms, sense changes in weather and season, communicate with each other across great distances through bonds you no longer possess." She paused, her amber eyes distant with memory. But the world was changing. The ice was advancing. The great cold was coming. And our people faced a choice. What choice? Whether to change with the world or remain as we were. Some of us believed we needed to become smaller, more adaptable, that we should use tools and fire instead of relying on our bodies, that we should dominate nature instead of living within it. Her voice grew heavy with old sorrow. The debate lasted generations, communities divided, families split apart. Those who chose change began transforming themselves through rituals and practices I do not fully understand, making themselves smaller, losing the connection to the earth, losing the ability to share memories directly, becoming what you now call human. And the others? Those of us who refused to change, who wanted to remain as we were called backward, primitive, dangerous. The small ones, the new humans, began to fear us. and fear turned to hatred, and hatred turned to conflict. She looked at me with eyes that had seen horrors I couldn't imagine. It was not a fair conflict, Dr. Sørensen. We were stronger in body, but they were cunning. They had fire, weapons, traps, and they had numbers, breeding faster once they became small. They hunted us systematically, eliminated the young ones first to prevent us from passing on our memories. Then the elders, then everyone else. That's systematic elimination of an entire people. Yes, the great erasure, but the erasure of our bloodline by those who were once family. Can you imagine? Hunting your own cousins, your own brothers and sisters who simply chose a different path? That is what humans did to become what you are. The weight of her words settled over me like a physical presence. If this was true, if humans really had committed the systematic elimination of a sister species that was genetically almost identical, it would rewrite everything we thought we knew about human nature. You said you remember this. How? If it happened 50,000 years ago, how can you personally remember? Nana smiled sadly. Because jotnar do not forget. We carry the memories of our entire people. Every child born inherits the collective memory of all who came before. I remember my mother's life, and her mother's life, and every life back to the first jotnar who walked this earth. That's biologically impossible. Your science says it is impossible. But your science does not understand consciousness as we do. Memory is not just chemical patterns in the brain. It is something deeper, something connected to the earth itself. We store our memories not just in our bodies, but in the land, in the stones, in the very bones of the world. She leaned forward. That is what you lost when you became human. The ability to remember truly. To carry your people's history in your own mind. You know only what is written or told to you. We know everything our ancestors knew, as if we had lived those lives ourselves. Then you remember the conflict, the great erasure. Every moment of it. I remember the night the small ones came to our settlement with fire and weapons. I remember my family trying to protect me, trying to hide me. I remember the screaming. Her voice cracked, raw emotion breaking through. I remember running into the ice with 3 children, the last jotnar children in my region. I remember using the old magic to put us into the deep sleep, hoping we would outlast the violence, hoping we would wake to a better world. She looked around the stark containment chamber. I did not expect to wake to this, to a world where my people are extinct, where we are remembered as monsters in stories told to frighten children, where the small ones have inherited everything we lost. Tears ran down her gray cheeks, cutting tracks through stone-colored skin. The children I saved, where are they? When your soldiers found me, did they find the others? Are they alive? We don't know. You were alone when we found you. The cave system where you were frozen is extensive. They might be deeper in the ice. Then I must find them. They are all that remains of my people. 3 children who have been asleep for 50,000 years while the world forgot we existed. She looked at me with desperate hope. Will you help me? Will you help me find them before your people decide we are too dangerous to allow to live? In that moment, looking into her eyes, I made a decision that would change everything. Yes, I'll help you, but first, I need you to show me. I need to access your memories directly to verify what you're telling me. The general won't authorize a search based on just your word. But if I can confirm your memories are real, if I can show him proof. You want the neural link, the connection of minds. How do you know about that? I heard the scientists discussing it. Your people have begun to rediscover what we always knew, that consciousness can be shared, that minds can touch across the barriers of individual bodies. You have crude technology to force what we did naturally. Will you allow it? Will you let me into your memories? Nana was quiet for a long moment. You understand what you are asking? To see through my eyes as the small ones eliminated my people? To feel what I felt as I watched my world die? These memories will change you, Dr. Sørensen. Once you remember what humanity did, you cannot unknow it. I understand. But it's the only way to prove you're telling the truth, the only way to get the resources to search for the children. Then yes, I will share my memories with you, but I have one condition. What condition? When you see the truth, when you remember what was done, promise me you will not let humanity repeat its mistake. Promise me that if we find the children, if more jotnar are frozen in the melting glaciers, you will fight for us to be allowed to exist. Not as specimens, not as threats, but as people who deserve to live. I met her amber eyes. I promise. The neural interface equipment was set up in the containment chamber over the next 6 hours. 2 caps covered in electrodes, one sized for a human head, one specially constructed for Nana's larger skull. Cables connecting both caps to a central processing unit. Monitors displaying our brain activity in real time. Magnus supervised the technical setup while the general watched from the observation room above. "This is insane," Magnus muttered as he adjusted the electrodes on my cap. "We're about to connect your consciousness to a creature whose neural architecture we barely understand." "Her neural architecture," I corrected. "She's a person, Magnus, not a creature. A person who claims to remember events 50,000 years ago. Kia, what if she's delusional? What if these memories aren't real? The psychological trauma of accessing false memories this vivid could cause permanent damage. Then I guess we'll find out together." Nana sat patiently as technicians positioned electrodes on her head, her massive frame making the delicate equipment look like children's toys. "Are you frightened?" she asked me. "Terrified," I admitted. "Good. Fear keeps you honest. The small ones lost their fear, lost their respect for the power of memory and consciousness. That is partly why they became so dangerous. Are you afraid?" She considered the question. "I am afraid of what you will see. Afraid of how you will react when you remember what your ancestors did. But I am not afraid of the connection itself. For us, sharing minds was natural. It is how we passed knowledge from one generation to the next, how we made decisions as a community. I have missed that connection more than I can express." The technicians finished their setup and retreated to the observation room. Magnus gave me a final worried look through the glass, then nodded. We were ready. I sat facing Nana, our eyes locked together. "When the link activates," I explained, "you'll need to focus on the specific memories you want to share. Think about the conflict, about what happened to your people. The technology will facilitate the connection, but you guide what I see." "I understand. But Dr. Sørensen, once we begin, we cannot stop halfway. You must see all of it, the full truth. Are you certain you are ready?" I wasn't certain at all, but I nodded anyway. "Do it." Magnus activated the system. For a few seconds nothing happened, just the hum of machinery and the beeping of monitors. Then my vision began to blur. The containment chamber faded, and suddenly I was somewhere else. Someone else. I was Nana, 50,000 years ago, standing on a windswept ridge overlooking a valley filled with life. The memory hit me with overwhelming intensity, not like watching a video, like being there. I could feel the wind on my skin, Nana's skin. Could smell the rich scent of pine and earth, could hear the sounds of the Jotnar community in the valley below, voices raised in song, children laughing, the rhythmic sound of stone being worked into tools and art. I felt Nana's consciousness beside my own, guiding me through the memory. "This was my home," her voice echoed in my mind. "Before the division, before the violence, when we were still one people." I looked down at her hands. They were gray, massive, powerful. But they moved with grace and precision as I used them to shape a piece of wood into a bowl. Around me, other Jotnar worked on their own projects, creating art, telling stories, living in a community that felt whole and connected in ways I'd never experienced as a human. "We were not primitive," Nana's voice continued. "We had art, music, philosophy. We understood the stars, the seasons, the cycles of life. We simply chose not to dominate nature, but to live within it. That was our way." The memory shifted. Time passed in compressed moments, years flowing by like water, and I felt the first stirrings of the division, Jotnar gathering for a great council, arguing about the future. The ice is coming, some said. The herds are moving south. The plants we depend on are dying. We must adapt or perish. We have survived ice ages before, others argued. We survive by moving with the herds, by understanding the changing world, not by trying to control it. But this time is different. The ice will cover everything. We need fire, tools, permanent shelters. We need to become smaller, more efficient. We need to change. To change is to lose ourselves, to abandon what makes us Jotnar, to cut ourselves off from the Earth's memory. That is not adaptation, that is erasure of our own identity. The debate raged for years. I felt Nana's confusion, her fear, as her people split into factions. Then the memory shifted again, and I saw them. The first small ones. Jotnar, who had undergone the transformation. They were shorter, 6 feet tall instead of 12. Their skin had lost its gray tone, becoming pink-brown. Their features had refined, become more delicate. They looked human. Because they were human, the first humans, born from Jotnar who chose to change. At first there was curiosity, wonder at what they had become. The small ones demonstrated their new abilities, greater manual dexterity, faster breeding, the ability to thrive on less food. They showed off their innovations, better tools, controlled fire, weapons that could strike from a distance. "See what we have gained," they said. "Join us. Become small and survive the ice." But many Jotnar refused. "You have lost the connection. You cannot hear the earth anymore, cannot share memories directly, cannot feel what we feel. You have become isolated, trapped in your own individual minds. That is not progress. That is loneliness." The small ones grew angry. "We are the future. You are the past. Join us or be left behind." But being left behind wasn't enough for them. The memory shifted again, and now I saw what Nana had meant by betrayal. The small ones had multiplied. Their faster breeding meant that within a few generations, they outnumbered the Jotnar 10-1, and they began to fear the Jotnar. "They are dangerous," the small ones said among themselves. "They are too strong. If they turn against us, we cannot defend ourselves, and they judge us, look down on us as defective. We must protect ourselves." Protection became aggression. At first it was just exclusion. Small ones refusing to share resources with Jotnar. Then it escalated to harassment. Small one children throwing stones at Jotnar, encouraged by their parents. Then violence began. The first deaths were called accidents. A Jotnar falling from a cliff after a rock slide the small ones had triggered. A Jotnar found dead of poisoning, poison the small ones had learned to extract from plants. But as fear turned to hatred, the small ones stopped pretending. They called the Jotnar monsters, demons, threats to human survival. They organized hunting parties, and the systematic elimination began, the great erasure of an entire people. The memory showed me the night that changed Nana's life forever. She was in her settlement, a community of 50 Jotnar living in harmony. Families sharing stories around a central fire. Children playing games that involved telepathic communication, their minds touching as naturally as their hands. Elders teaching the young ones how to listen to the earth's rhythms. Then the screaming started. Small ones poured into the settlement from all sides, hundreds of them, carrying torches and weapons, spears with stone points, clubs, fire. The Jotnar tried to defend themselves, but were overwhelmed by sheer numbers. I felt Nana's horror as she watched her mother fall, struck by a dozen spears, watched her father crushed under a rock slide the small ones had triggered, watched the children, precious children who carried the memories of 1,000 generations, hunted down and eliminated. Because the small ones knew that to truly erase the Jotnar, they had to eliminate the young ones, had to prevent the memories from passing to the next generation. Nana ran. She grabbed 3 children, the only survivors she could reach, and fled into the night. Behind her, the settlement burned. She ran for days, the children clinging to her, traumatized and grieving. They ran north, into the coldest regions where the small ones rarely ventured, into the glaciers of Finnmark, deep into ice caves that had existed for thousands of years. And there, in the deepest part of the ice, Nana made her choice. She gathered the 3 children around her. "We cannot outrun them," she told the children as they huddled together in the freezing darkness. "The small ones will hunt us until there are none of us left. But there is another way. The old magic, the deep connection to the earth. We can slow our bodies, become like the stone and ice around us. We can sleep. And perhaps when we wake, the world will be different. Perhaps the small ones will have learned mercy." The children were frightened but trusted her. She held them close and spoke the old words, words that connected her consciousness to the earth itself. She felt her body begin to slow, her heartbeat dropping from once per second to once per minute. Her breathing becoming so shallow it was almost imperceptible, her body temperature dropping to match the ice around her. The children did the same, their small bodies curling against hers for warmth that was no longer there. And as the hibernation took hold, as 50,000 years of sleep began, Nana had one final thought. Remember. When we wake, remember everything. Remember what was done. Remember what was lost. And remember that we chose mercy when they chose violence. The memory released me, and I was back in the containment chamber, back in my own body, gasping for air, tears streaming down my face, my entire body shaking with the weight of what I'd experienced. Nana sat across from me, her own face wet with tears. "Now you know," she said softly. "Now you remember what humanity would prefer to forget." I couldn't speak, couldn't process what I'd seen. 50,000 years of history, of the systematic elimination of an entire people, of a choice humanity made to erase a sister species rather than coexist with them. And the worst part? Understanding why. The small ones, early humans, had been afraid. Afraid of being stronger than them, afraid of judgment from those who had chosen differently, afraid that their choice to become small had been wrong. So they eliminated the alternative, hunted everyone who represented a different path, and then rewrote history to make themselves the heroes. The technicians rushed into the chamber. Magnus was there, checking my vital signs, talking rapidly, but I couldn't hear him. All I could hear was the screaming from that night 50,000 years ago. All I could see was Nana's mother falling, pierced by dozens of spears. All I could feel was the weight of human guilt. Finally, I found my voice. "It's true," I whispered. "All of it. The division, the hunting, the great erasure, everything." The general's voice came through the intercom from the observation room. "Dr. Sørensen, we need you to come up here immediately for debriefing." I looked at Nana. At this being who had suffered so much, who had lost everything, and who had chosen to preserve 3 children rather than seek revenge. "The children," I said. "We have to find them. General, we have to find them now." Over the next week, I helped organize the most unusual search and rescue operation in human history. Climate research teams, equipped with the same technology that had found Nana, began systematically scanning the Finnmark glaciers for heat signatures, looking for bodies that had been frozen for 50,000 years, bodies that might still be alive. I spent every day with Nana, helping her pinpoint locations where other jotnar might have fled. She drew maps from memory, maps of a world that existed before the last ice age, maps that shouldn't have been accurate after 50,000 years of geological change. But they were accurate. When we cross-referenced her memories with modern geological surveys, they matched. Valleys that were now filled with ice had been open tundra when she was last awake. Mountain passes that were now impassable had been the main routes between settlements. She remembered the landscape with perfect clarity. And that's how we found the first child, deep in a glacier that was melting faster than any other in the region. The climate researchers detected a heat signature and called in the extraction team. They brought the frozen form up carefully, wrapped in thermal blankets to prevent temperature shock. When they laid the child on the examination table in the lab, Nana wept. "Bjorn," she whispered, "son of Haldor. He was 8 years old when I put him to sleep. Loved to sing. Could remember every song ever sung by our people. We thawed him carefully, monitoring his vital signs, watching as impossible biology brought him back from hibernation that had lasted longer than human civilization. His eyes opened, amber eyes like Nana's. He screamed, terrified, disoriented, thrashing against the restraints, until Nana spoke to him, in the old language, words I couldn't understand but that carried weight and comfort. The boy's eyes found her. Recognition flooded his face. "Nana? Nana, where are we? Why is it so bright? Where are the others?" She held him, this massive child who was still smaller than her adult form, rocked him and sang to him. The same song I'd heard her singing days before, the lullaby for frightened children. "The long sleep is over, little one. The ice has released us, but we are in a different time now. The small ones rule this world. Everything has changed. Are we safe? I don't know yet, but we are together, and we will find the others." Over the next 3 months, we found 17 more, 12 children and 5 adults. All of them had fled to the glaciers in different regions of Finnmark. All of them had chosen the deep hibernation rather than face extinction. Some had been frozen alone, others in small groups. One adult male, Sigurd, had been protecting 6 children when the ice claimed them. Each awakening was both a miracle and a tragedy. A miracle because they survived, a tragedy because they woke to find their entire civilization extinct, their people reduced to legends, their history erased. Nana held them all together. She was their anchor, their living link to the world they remembered. She helped them process the grief of losing everything, helped them understand the massive changes in the world, and she prevented them from seeking revenge. Because some of them wanted revenge, Sigurd especially. "The small ones eliminated everyone we loved," he said in one of the group meetings. "Hunted us like animals, burned our settlements, hunted down our children, and now they outnumber us billions to one. Why should we show them mercy when they showed us none?" "Because," Nana said quietly, "we are not them. We do not respond to the great erasure with more violence. That is what makes us different from what they became. We remember, but we do not become what we remember. We are the last jotnar. We will not end our existence with more bloodshed." "Then what do we do?" Sigurd demanded. "We are 19 in a world of 7 billion. We cannot hide. The climate scientists will find every frozen jotnar as the glaciers melt. We cannot fight. What choice do we have except to survive any way we can?" "We teach," Nana said simply. "We show humans what they lost when they chose separation over connection. We offer them a chance to remember who they were. Some will reject us, some will fear us, but some will listen. And for those who listen, we can show them another way." I worked with the Norwegian government to establish a protected territory in Finnmark, a region where the 19 surviving jotnar could live according to their traditional ways. No human development, no industrial intrusion, just land and space, and the freedom to exist. It wasn't easy. There was opposition from many sides. Fear that trolls living openly would cause panic. Concern about legal precedent. If trolls had rights, what about other species? Demands from various governments and corporations to study the jotnar, to take tissue samples, to understand how they survived 50,000 years frozen. But I fought. With data, with testimony, with appeals to basic humanity. And eventually, we won. The Finnmark territory was established, recognized by international law as sovereign land belonging to the jotnar. The day they moved in, I went with them. watched as Nana stood on a ridge overlooking the valley that would be their new home. "It is not the world we knew," she said quietly, "but it is a start, a place where we can remember without fear, where we can teach those who wish to learn, where we can be whole." The children ran through the valley below, playing games that involved their telepathic connections. Their laughter, the first genuine laughter I'd heard from them, echoed off the mountains. "Thank you, Dr. Sorensen," Nana said, "for believing us, for fighting for us, for choosing to remember rather than forget. Thank you for trusting me, for sharing your memories, for giving humanity a chance to do better than our ancestors did." She smiled, that sad, ancient smile. "Perhaps 50,000 years from now, your descendants will have learned. Perhaps they will find a way to reconnect with what was lost. Perhaps they will become whole again." "Perhaps," I agreed. That was 5 years ago. The jotnar still live in their protected territory in Finnmark. They live simply, according to the old ways, connected to the earth in ways most humans have forgotten, practicing what we in Norway call friluftsliv, the concept of outdoor life, of connecting with nature, but at a level we can barely comprehend. They can sense weather changes days in advance, can communicate telepathically across kilometers, can remember every detail of their 50,000-year history with perfect clarity. But they are not completely isolated. Nana established what she calls the School of Remembering. Humans can visit, by invitation only, to learn, to practice the old skills of environmental awareness, to understand the cost of the choices humanity made 50,000 years ago, to remember what was lost. I teach there sometimes, helping to bridge the gap between human and jotnar understanding, translating concepts that don't have words in modern languages. The first students were Norwegian, people drawn to reconnect with the deep environmental consciousness that our ancestors possessed. Scientists studying consciousness and collective memory. Environmentalists seeking to understand how a species could live in true harmony with nature for hundreds of thousands of years. Philosophers exploring questions of identity and what it means to be human. But the most profound changes happened in the ordinary people who visited. People who had lost connection with nature in our modern technological world. I remember watching a young woman named Kari during her first week at the school. She was from Oslo, worked in tech, lived in an apartment where she barely saw the sky. When Nana first took her hand and shared a memory, just a small one, of what it felt like to truly sense the forest, Kari wept. "I didn't know," she said. "I didn't know what we'd lost. I thought technology gave us everything. But we gave up something essential to get it." Over her month at the school, I watched her change. She learned to sense weather patterns in her body, to feel the rhythms of day and night in ways that went beyond visual cues, to understand that consciousness wasn't limited to individual brains, but was part of something larger. When she left, she was different, quieter, more present, more connected. "I'm going back to Oslo," she told me, "but I'm not going back to the same life. I can't. Not now that I know what's possible. I'm going to teach others, help them remember." She wasn't alone. Over 5 years, hundreds of people have passed through the School of Remembering. They return to their modern lives changed. Some make small changes, spending more time in nature, practicing mindfulness in ways informed by jotnar technique. Others make radical changes, leaving cities, dedicating themselves to environmental causes, teaching the old ways to new generations. The Norwegian government has taken notice. They've incorporated some jotnar environmental wisdom into conservation policies, recognizing that indigenous knowledge, and in this case, pre-indigenous knowledge, has value that modern science is only beginning to understand. Other countries have expressed interest. Sweden sent a delegation to study how the jotnar sense climate patterns. Finland invited Nana to speak at a conference on collective consciousness. Even skeptics are beginning to acknowledge that the jotnar represent something extraordinary, not just evolutionarily, though the biological implications of 50,000-year hibernation are staggering, but philosophically, they offer proof that human evolution wasn't inevitable, that we made choices, that those choices had costs, and that alternatives still exist. The jotnar remain few, just 19 of them, and they age, slowly but inevitably. Nana has gray in her moss-colored hair now. The children are growing into adolescence. Unless more are found in the melting glaciers and the search continues, this generation may be the last. But Nana says that's not what matters. We do not measure success by numbers, she told me recently. We measure it by memory, by whether the truth survives. For 50,000 years, humanity forgot what it did. Forgot that there was another way. Now, at least some of you remember. That is victory enough. We were sitting on the ridge overlooking the valley, watching the children practice the old forms of communication. Do you regret it? I asked. Waking up to this world, finding that everything you knew was gone? She was quiet for a long moment. I regret that my people were eliminated, that 50,000 years of knowledge and culture were nearly erased. But I do not regret waking, because now we can tell our story. Now the truth exists in the world again, not just in ice and memory. She looked at me with those ancient amber eyes. And I have hope, Dr. Sørensen. Because humans can learn. You proved that. You chose to believe me when you could have dismissed me as delusional. You fought for us when you could have walked away. That gives me hope that others will make similar choices. I think about that conversation often, about the choice humanity made so long ago, about what we gained and what we lost. We became clever. We built civilizations. We conquered the planet. But we lost our connection to the earth. We lost the ability to feel what Nana feels, to remember what she remembers, to be part of something larger than ourselves. The jotnar in Finnmark live as living reminders of another way. Some humans mock them, call them primitive, backward, irrelevant to the modern world, but others come to learn, to sit with Nana and hear the old stories, to practice the old skills, to remember what we forgot. And slowly, incrementally, ideas are spreading. Schools in Norway are beginning to teach about the jotnar, not as myths, but as historical fact. Children learn that human evolution wasn't a straight line from primitive to advanced, that our ancestors made choices, that those choices had consequences. Environmental movements have adopted jotnar philosophy, the idea that humans are part of nature, not separate from it, that our well-being is inseparable from the Earth's well-being, that technology without wisdom is destruction. Scientists are studying the biological mechanisms that allowed the jotnar to survive 50,000-year hibernation. The implications for space travel, for medicine, for understanding consciousness itself are staggering. But more importantly, philosophers and ethicists are wrestling with the implications of the jotnar's existence. What does it mean that humans committed the systematic elimination of an entire people 50,000 years ago? What responsibility do we have to the survivors? What can we learn from their alternative vision of what intelligent life could be? These aren't easy questions, and there are no simple answers, but at least we're asking them now. At least the conversation is happening. I don't know what the future holds for either species. The jotnar are few and age slowly, but still age. Humanity continues racing toward a future we can't predict, driven by technology that's advancing faster than our wisdom. But I know this. The choice our ancestors made 50,000 years ago wasn't inevitable. It was just that, a choice. And choices can be remade. We are not prisoners of our past. We are not locked into the path we chose. Every day we can choose differently. To reconnect instead of dominate. To remember instead of forget. To be whole instead of divided. That's what Nana taught me. That's what she wanted me to share. Not that humanity is evil or wrong for the choice we made, but that it was a choice, and we can choose again. The origin of humanity isn't what they taught us in school. It's not a story of progress from primitive to advanced. It's a story of division, of a people who split into two paths. One path chose size and connection and memory. The other chose smallness and cleverness and forgetting. Neither path was wrong. But only remembering both paths gives us the complete picture. We are the small ones, the descendants of those who chose to shrink ourselves to survive the Ice Age, who chose tools over connection, who chose forgetting over remembering. But we are also the children of the jotnar, the inheritors of their memories, even if we can't access them anymore. 99.7% of our DNA is identical. We are family, separated by 50,000 years of choices and consequences. And maybe, just maybe, we can learn to be both, clever and connected, technological and natural, human and whole. That's my hope. That's why I tell this story. Not to make humanity feel guilty for choices made 50,000 years ago, but to remind us that we have choices now, and the choice we make will determine what we become next. The jotnar offer us a mirror, a reflection of what we were and what we gave up. Whether we choose to look in that mirror is up to us. But the mirror is there. In Finnmark, in 19 beings who remember 50,000 years of history, in a truth that was buried in ice and lies. And now you know it too.